So how do you get a fair shot at credit when the traditional system just says no? It's a massive question that affects literally billions of people. In this explainer, we're going to dive into the huge challenges, some really surprising solutions, and the pretty complex future of who gets access to money.
I mean, have you ever been in that position? Maybe for a car, or that small business idea you had, or even just a simple credit card? It's frustrating, right? But for a huge chunk of the world's population, it's not just an occasional thing.
It's more like a massive barrier. Let's call it the credit wall. It literally separates people who have access to capital from those who don't, and it creates this cycle of exclusion that is just incredibly hard to break out of.
So let's talk about that wall. What really happens when you find yourself on the wrong side of it? Well, being shut out of the formal banking system can push you towards some pretty dangerous places. This right here is the dark side of financial exclusion. Predatory lenders, they prey on desperation. They create these debt traps that are almost impossible to escape. So the real question is, how do we help people climb over this wall? Or even better, how do we tear it down completely? Well, the first answer might actually surprise you. It's not some high-tech app or a complicated financial product. It's about people. It's about building what sociologists call social capital. And there's this fascinating case study that shows exactly how it works.
The idea was actually pretty simple. This program brought parents together to work on school projects. Now, they weren't there to talk about money at first, but by working together and solving problems, they started to build connections. And, this is the crucial part, they started to build trust.
Okay, so before this program kicked off back in 2009, participation in community savings groups, these things are called ROSCAs, was super low. We're talking only about 3.2% of households. Why? Because there just wasn't enough trust in the community to pool their money together. And then look what happened. Just 2 years later, that participation jumped to 4.5%. Now, that might not sound like a huge number, but that's an increase of more than 40%. By building trust, the community unlocked a totally new level of financial cooperation.
And this just perfectly illustrates a really powerful truth. Sometimes the best financial tool isn't a bank account at all. It's a network of people you can actually trust. But what if we could take that human element and combine it with the massive scale of technology?
And that, of course, brings us to technology. We're talking about fintech, peer-to-peer lending, and DeFi, or decentralized finance. All of these things promise to just bypass the old gatekeepers completely and create a more open, more accessible financial world for everyone.
I mean, the difference is pretty stark when you look at it. Traditional banking can be slow, it can be exclusive, it's full of bureaucracy. But DeFi and P2P platforms, they're built to be open to basically anyone with an internet connection, and they can process loans in hours, sometimes even minutes. They promise to finally give everyone a seat at the table. But is it really that simple?
Well, as it turns out, when you swap out human gatekeepers for algorithms, you don't magically get rid of bias. Nope. Sometimes you just hide it. You bake it right into the code, usually because the algorithm is trained on historical data that just reflects our own existing societal biases. For instance, research into these P2P platforms found a really clear pattern. Even when you control for all the other factors, loans for small businesses consistently came with a higher price tag.
So how much higher? Well, the risk premium on a small business loan is, on average, 2.7% higher than a non-small business loan with the exact same credit grade. The algorithm basically sees small business and just slaps on an extra cost no matter how good the individual borrower is.
So that makes you wonder, right? If the algorithms are biased in this one area, where else could these hidden biases be lurking? To really get this, we need to understand two different types of discrimination.
Okay, so on the left, you've got disparate treatment. That's the obvious stuff, intentionally treating someone differently. Disparate impact, though, on the right, that's a lot sneakier. That's when a rule or an algorithm that's supposed to be neutral ends up hurting a specific group, even if that was never the intention.
And here is where things get really wild. A study on gender and P2P lending found something totally counterintuitive. On the surface, it looked like loans from women were actually more likely to get funded. Great, right? But when they dug deeper, the data showed a hidden disparity. The system was demanding that female borrowers have a higher expected rate of return just to get that funding. So while it looks like a positive outcome, there's a serious underlying bias still at play.
And DeFi is not immune to problems either. The transaction fees, which are known as gas fees, can fluctuate like crazy. And this volatility creates a whole new kind of wall for the unbanked, who are the very people that need stability the most. For them, it's not a solution. It's just another unpredictable hurdle to clear.
Okay, so if the old human-centric solutions have their flaws, and the new tech-centric solutions have their own flaws, where do we go from here? Well, the answer might be in using smarter data to build a much more complete picture of who a person really is.
And this is where a really cool idea comes into play: alternative data. So, instead of only relying on old-school credit scores from past loans, this approach looks at other signs of financial responsibility, things like paying your rent or utility bills on time, to paint a much more accurate picture.
Just look at some of these examples. For a farmer, data on their crop yields could be a way better predictor of their ability to repay a loan. For someone who does gig work, their bank transaction history shows a steady flow of income that a traditional report would totally miss. This is all about using the data that's already out there, but in a much, much smarter way. And get this isn't just some pie-in-the-sky idea. The UltraFico score is a real product that does exactly this. It lets you link your checking and savings accounts, and it looks for positive financial habits, like keeping a balance and avoiding overdrafts, to potentially give your credit score a boost. It's a real step towards a more complete assessment.
So, we're really at a fork in the road here. The tools we're building have the power to either tear down those old credit walls for good, or, as we've seen, they could just build new ones that are even more complex and harder to see. The path we choose is going to determine the future of financial fairness for millions. What do you think comes next?